Alright, well, we got the forward panels on. As you can see, this is a look at my joint here. Everything, ideally, if I did this right, my paint line will come right underneath this joint and cross onto the bottom here. So basically, everything from about this point has to be just a flawless joint. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. This is my first side. And you can see there's a little overhang. I haven't sanded any of this back. I just lightly knocked the big stuff off. Here's one spot here where the corner of the ply just tore out a little bit, but I think I can famo wood that up and hide it, dang near make it disappear. So I was pretty happy with how this joint turned out, because this is going to be natural. You'll see this joint. There's a couple spots like this one here that just a hair bit of famo wood, and I think I can make that plenty clean enough for a bright finish instead of instead of doing a fake water line and following this chine to hide an ugly joint. That turned out pretty good. I ended up using my multi-tool for that and cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting. It took me 15 hours to do these two panels. I just did this one tonight, and you can see I've got, bits of epoxy here and there. But take a look at this joint. I mean, this is unsanded. I haven't sanded any of this. And it just turned out like flawless. I used a different method on this side. I actually faired it, bent the ply around and faired it with my belt sander over until it met. And then I flipped the belt sander upside down on an angle and ground underneath to get that to fit. And it just turned out beautiful. There are a couple of spots, very, very slight spots, where I may have to put a little famo wood, but super clean. I wish I would have done that on the other side. So you can see my overlap right now. That'll all get faired off after it dries. And here's our joint where we move from a butt joint to a lap joint. But looking pretty good. You can see the wet epoxy running down the center line here. But I'm pretty proud of it. It turned out really nice. I think those joints are plenty clean enough to do my true water line like I was hoping. So that's where we are, making good progress. 15 hours it took me to do this. About 8 hours on the first panel, 7 hours, 8 hours. And the other panel, 7.5 hours to 8. I can't remember which one was which. And the reason being is, that's one of the panels. And it turns out, right up here at the tip, where it was meeting the stem, I made some marks on it, I think right in here. Here it is. This mark, it was actually a 1/2 inch shy. Right at the tip, this line kind of curves out a 1/2 inch. And no matter how hard I tried, I just could not stretch that plywood a 1/2 inch. So I had to bite the bullet and take the second panel out and recut it and add a 1/2 inch up there at the top to make it wider and redo that entire panel on the starboard side, this panel here. But I'm glad I did, because again, it's just the right way to do it. It turned out really nice. So look at that. We're officially planked, minus the transom skin. That's the last step. So we'll get this faired off, get the joints faired, get the transom skin glued on, and I'll start plugging and fairing holes, getting ready for the epoxy barrier coat. Making great progress. Alright, well, started some fairing tonight. We got the stem all faired. I'll try to get close to it. Right down the center. Meets up really nice. So I did a little fairing down this joint. It's not done yet, but looks really nice. I think it's plenty clean enough for my natural water line. Of course, we'll know more after I get a couple of little spots, famo wood, and sanded down. I got to fill all these screw holes, of course, and then I'll get the epoxy barrier coat on the whole external. I still have yet to do the transom skin, but that's nothing now. That's a flat panel and not a very big one. So anyhow, I'll get that panel on, and I'll fair and fill some more, and more fairing and more filling. Alright, so this is what we're doing tonight. Famo wood filler, mahogany colored. As you can see, I've got pretty much everything from this seam forward done on the port side. I went over the first stuff that I did to kind of fill in those low spots, and I'll probably have to go over all of this a lot, not a lot, I'm sorry, have to go over it all once again after I've let everything dry, sanded it back. You know, they tend to suck in a little bit over the holes, so there'll probably be a second application over most of these again. Here's all down this side. And I decided to call it quits. My little bag I was using to dispense it ran out at these last couple right here. So tomorrow I'll start sanding this back, and then I'll probably apply the rear half. I need to get the rear transom skin on still. But now she's a speckled boat. Alright, well, this is where we are. This is our update. I've got all of the holes filled at least once, some of them twice, sanded back. Got my chine lines kind of roughed in there. They're turning out pretty good. I got all these holes filled and sanded. You can see the blotches, light, dark, all the way down here. Those are the screw holes that we filled. So I'll probably go sand the entire hull just to get rid of that light, dark area. But as far as the screw holes go, they're all plugged. Here's a look up here at the stem. You can see there's 3 dark spots there, there, and there. Those were screws that actually didn't get countersunk far enough. So I ended up digging the Famo wood out of the Phillips head of them, backing them out, countersinking them a little deeper, putting the screw back in, and then re-Famo wood plugging them. So that's where we are at the moment on that. This side, same deal. It's all sanded. Our chine line looks pretty good. I don't know if it's good enough for bright sides good, but it's pretty good. We'll know more after she's coated. And today I just finished putting on our 1/4 inch skin. You can see I got all these clamps across the bottom here, and then I couldn't obviously clamp up here to anything, so I cut some 3/4 inch blocks of mahogany, and I used one tiny little 18 gauge pin nail to hold that in place. Basically, I pressed hard on it, and then I hit it with the pinner nail to hold that in place. And if I did this right, I'm hoping when this dries, I can pop this block off, and either the nail will come with it, or I can grab a hold of the nail and pull it out gently, and then there'll be, you know, a few spots, one per each one of these blocks, that I'll have to put just a tiny little amount of Famo wood in to plug up. But it should totally be hidden. All of these across the bottom you won't see because of the water line. It'll just be a few, 3 or 4 right up the sides here. But that's where we are. We're making great progress. So every now and then, throughout this boat building process, you have small victories. And this transom was one of those small victories. My idea about using the 18 gauge pin nails, my brad nailer, to attach that transom, and hoping and praying that when I pulled this block off, the nail would come with it. And it did. Every single one of these, as you can see, came out. I just took a pair of slip joint pliers, I clamped on it, I rocked it a bit, and then pulled it straight out. So there was a saying I came across on one particular boat building website that went something like, boat building is a series of tragic events obscured by the occasional miracle. And forgive me, I don't know who said it, who the quote is by, but that is very, very true. These little blocks with the 18 gauge pin nails, that was the occasional miracle. So I went ahead and put some Famo wood on the spots. You can see they're just about dry over here. Not quite as dry on this side. The holes themselves were so small, you just about couldn't see them with no filler in them at all. So with the filler, they'll completely disappear. You'll never even know that I used the 18 gauge brad nails to hold it in place. But small victory. And now I'm getting ready to fair this off. So making good progress. So I picked up this little random orbital sander so I could basically sand the entire hull, just a quick once over before I epoxy it, just to roughen everything up. Works really good. I like it. I didn't own one. So here is a look at our joints. This is where I mixed the wood flour or sawdust, mahogany sawdust, with epoxy and used it for a structural filler. I got that all sanded down. Same with this joint here. It's all sanded down now. So one of the last things I'll have to do is mix up some fairing compound, which is nothing more than micro balloons and epoxy. And I'll widen this out all the way out here with the fairing compound, and probably 3-4 inches down each side of the tip or the center here, and then fair it one last time just to make sure that everything's smoothed in really well. And I'll do the same, the micro balloons down this joint, and get it all sanded again. Now you can see here these dark spots. This is where I sanded through the very top layer, the veneer, a little bit. But that doesn't bother me again at all, because our water line is going to come right around here, and this will all be buried under paint. You'll never even see it. So don't worry if you burn through on the bottom a little bit. It's not going to hurt a darn thing. So that's where we are at the moment. I found a couple more screws right here, ones that were sticking out. So I again pulled them out. Re-countersunk them and re-family-wooded them, and I'll get those sanded off tomorrow. But you know, even though this area will be covered by a stainless transom band, it was the right thing to do. Take them back out, re-countersink them. It doesn't take that much time, and it's something, you know, in the end result you're going to be proud of, to know that even though nobody would have ever saw it, you still took the time to do the right thing. So making good progress. We are not that far off from getting our epoxy encapsulation coats on. Not that far off at all. Alright, look at this. We've got our first epoxy encapsulation coat on. You can see it's not like super glossy right now. It's a very, very thin coat. So you're seeing some of the imperfections. I did sand the entire exterior of the hull. If you look up here, this is our filler, and you can see, oh, there you can see the gloss on it. So that's how it should, the entire thing should look after another couple coats. But it darkened up substantially when I applied the epoxy on it. And again, this is Glen-L epoxy shield. This is the gallon kit. Makes like 1.2 gallons or something like that. A bit of a mess here on my mixing table. I set up a table so I could mix everything and have everything I need in one area. I rolled it on with a 4-inch roller and a foam brush. And this is the tray I would mix it in my cups. In one cup, you can see I drew Sharpie lines, 5 ounce and then 1 ounce. So it's a 5-to-1, 5 of the resin, 1 of the hardener. Mix it for 2 minutes. I set a timer on each batch. And after it was mixed up, then I poured the mixture into here, scraped the cup out really well, set it down for the next batch of mixing, grabbed my pan and my roller and foam brush and rolled the panel. And it took about 6 ounces or so per panel for the first 2 to 3 panels, and then the foam roller got completely saturated and I could go substantially farther. You can see some gloss on some of the parts here and there. But anyhow, so then I rolled it on, and then I did what's called a roll and tip technique. I rolled it on, which creates tiny little air bubbles, which in a perfect world would naturally rise to the surface and pop. But you can give it a little helping by taking that foam brush completely dry and just dragging it across the surface, and that will pop all of those little bubbles. Here's a look at the front. Again, this is the very first coat, and it's semi-glossy right now. It'll be a lot better after the next few. But it definitely did darken up quite a bit. Although, it's funny looking through my viewfinder in the camera on the boat. It is so much lighter in the camera than it is in person standing here. Here's a look at the transom. Now that's closer to the color that I'm seeing. Quite a bit darker than what you're seeing up here with the light reflecting on it. But we've got our first coat of epoxy. rolled and tipped. I'll let this set up until it greens up a little bit. It'll get to a point where it's kind of hard to you can dent it still with your fingernail, but it's not sticky. And I'll roll on the next coat. So long as, according to the Glen-L epoxy shield instructions, so long as you roll on the next coat, within 24 hours you do not have to sand between coats. You do not have to wash any amine blush off. So long as it's coated within 24 hours, you don't have to do any of that, and it will, because it's still green, the fresh epoxy over the bottom epoxy that's still curing will form a chemical bond. So that's my plan. Making good progress. It's almost waterproof.